And we are now recording. Hello and welcome to the second session of this 6-part webinar series in support of Washington History Day educators. These webinars are brought to you by OSPI's Washington History Day program and the Washington State Council for the Social Studies. My name is Hannah Tofty and I'm the state coordinator for the Washington History Day program. And I'm joined today by Brad Liebrecht of the Washington State Council for the Social Studies, who will be serving today as our Q&A moderator. Brad and I are also pleased to welcome Michelle Annett from Cascade Middle School and Kila Salyers Smith from Prosser High School. And we'll be joined later by Brian Loffer, Director of Assessment and Highly Capable Programs for the Bethel School District. The idea behind these webinars was to bring together History Day expertise from across the state to help History Day educators here in Washington to strengthen their programs. And that comes not just from the sharing of ideas, but also from the sharing of resources. So we've asked each of our presenters to provide a resource for educators to take home with them. And our friends at WSCSS will be hosting video recordings of each webinar, along with all the presenter resources on their website, WSCSS.org. One free clock hour is available for each of our 6 webinars, and you do have to sign up for each webinar's clock hour separately. And I do want to note that the registration deadline for clock hours has been extended from 4:00 p.m. the day prior to the webinar. It's now 3:00 p.m. on the day of the webinar. So you can still sign up for clock hours for a webinar up to 30 minutes until it starts, 30 minutes before the webinar starts. And for those of you who signed up for clock hours for this webinar today, you will receive an email from PD Enroller within the next few days that has instructions for how to complete your post-training clock hour paperwork. For those of you who would like to receive clock hours for one of our upcoming webinars, there are PD Enroller links in the webinar flyer, or you can also visit pdenroller.org and search for History Day to find a list of our remaining webinars. And I was told that there were some initial problems getting clock hours launched for webinar 6. So if you were not able to register for a clock hour for webinar 6 before, you should be able to now. And if you have any questions about clock hours, feel free to put them in the Q&A or send me an email. Today's webinar is titled History Day Program Support, Insight from a District Administrator, Partnering with Your School Librarian, and Fundraising Techniques. We'll be hearing first from Michelle on partnering with your school librarian, but just a few quick Zoom logistics before we begin. We're Zooming in webinar format today. So audio and video capabilities are only enabled for our presenters. As attendees, you do not need to worry about muting yourselves or turning on or off your video during the presentations. Just sit back and relax and enjoy these great presenters that we have for you today. However, we would absolutely love for you to engage with the presenters through the Q&A function, which if you hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen, you should find it down there. So feel free to put any questions that you have for the presenters in the Q&A function and at any time during their presentations, and Brad is going to be keeping an eye on those and he'll relay your questions to the presenters as we go. I'm now happy to turn things over to Michelle.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Michelle Annett. I teach, I'm a librarian at Cascade Middle School in Vancouver. We have approximately 970 students in our building, and we have 3 highly capable classrooms that do the project every year, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Prior to moving to the library, I was a History Day teacher at another middle school in our district for about 15 years. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is, I'm going to start with just the handout that has my email address on it. You are welcome to send me questions, and I'm sure Hannah will get this to you. So I just want to talk a little bit about how your librarian can help you. And Brad, if there's any questions, feel free to interrupt me as I'm talking, because I'll probably talk pretty fast. The first one is interlibrary loan. When we have 90 students who all have different History Day topics, there's just no way that our specific school library is going to have a book on each topic. So your librarian is going to be an expert at figuring out how to find those books. My district has 6 middle schools, 4 high schools, 29 elementary schools. So we have a lot of other schools to choose from. You can also partner with the public library. Our public library has a teen services coordinator who we send her our topics about 3 weeks before we take a field trip. And she will get books from their library system into our library so that the kids can get them while they're there. And then the third resource that's really helpful is WorldCat. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that, maybe. And WorldCat searches for books and DVDs and you know, CDs, articles, things like that. But if I were looking for a book on the Navajo Code Talkers, it's going to search, and then when I select one of them, it will tell me, if I scroll, maybe not. Oh, here we go. So it'll tell me what libraries in the area have that. And I find that's really useful for those kids who they've picked maybe an obscure topic and they just cannot find anything in the school library or the public library. This searches through colleges and other libraries, and then you know where to start to go find it. Databases is another big one that we can help with. There are a lot of features in databases that most kids will just gloss right over. I didn't put any links in here because our databases are all linked through our public library, and you have to have a library card to be able to access them. But I wanted to just show you a couple. One of my favorites is Gale in Context, and they have a world history and a US history one. And some of the features that the kids might not see is, first off, is this Cite button. This button is awesome. When you click it, it will give you some options for formatting, and then you can copy and paste right away. You can also export it to Google Drive, which is a great way for kids to keep all their stuff in one place. You can also sign in with Google, and then you can download the resources so that you have them to be able to take notes on, to refer back to. Another one that I like is ProQuest. Let's stick with our Navajo. Oops, I'm gonna log back in. Nope, maybe not. All right, well, in ProQuest, there are a lot of features where you can search by specific date. One of my favorites is the New York Times Historical, which goes back to 1860 and is a great way to find primary sources. Another area where I really partner with our classroom teachers is on teaching research skills. A big one is Boolean operators, which if you are not familiar with that, Boolean operators are words like and, or, not. And I've linked to a Google article there that talks about how to use them in Google. I find that using not is really helpful in History Day. You know, if you're trying to do something on penguins and all you're getting is stuff about sports, you can add not hockey, not things like that. So we can teach those research skills and then be in the classroom to help students find, you know, apply those skills. Another thing we do is analyzing sources, and I like to teach middle school and high school kids the CRAP test, which is currency, reliability, accuracy, and point of view, and to get them to start looking at their sources and questioning, is this really a website that I want to use or not? And then for those obscure topics, I really like to point out the source books. And let's see if I have them. No. I'm going to go ahead and open them up. Fordham University has these source books that have all kinds of, they're not obscure, but to, a 7th grade student finding something on Islamic history is not going to be that easy. And they've got the ancient stuff is great for those kids who like to do Aristotle, Plato, things like that. And then the medieval stuff is also pretty good. And so, just knowing that these are there and being able to point kids to them, I will say, they're at Fordham, so they're written at a pretty high level, but they are amazing primary sources.
Interrupt very quickly.
Yeah.
We have a question from one of the participants. Do you have a handout on the CRAP technique that we could share?
So the link there will take you to this page. And then I do have, it's got the questions that we ask the kids over here on the left. And I have one that I can send a link to as well. So I will do that when we are done. And then when it comes time to creating projects, I would assume your teacher librarian is probably also in charge of tech support in your building. So they can help with documentaries. We have a quiet space in the library where kids can record. I teach small groups of kids how to edit, how to do transitions, how to change photo size before uploading it. Same thing with the websites. We did not have many kids do it last year, so I'm not as familiar with the new system, but we used to do quite a bit with Weebly before. We have a makerspace in our library. Hopefully yours does too. We help kids with their exhibits, just the cutting and the gluing and the, set up, maybe they're painting something. We've had kids sew performance costumes in our makerspace. They paint their backdrops. We build stuff out of that plastic piping. And then for feedback for students, 30 kids, sometimes you might have 25 different projects in a classroom. It's a lot to get around to try to give kids timely feedback. And so bringing in another adult who can ask kids good questions and give them some feedback is helpful. 2 tips I would suggest is try to schedule your collaboration as far in advance as possible. My building, we've got 50 some odd teachers, and I'm doing a lot of other stuff, and it gets pretty tough to squeeze something in. So I like to have almost a month's notice, and I don't mind if we need to change something at the last minute, but at least if I get them on the calendar, then they're in that space and I don't give it to somebody else and I'm not out in the science classroom or something like that. And then my other big one is to participate in the lesson. Co-teach if you can, so that you are working with students at the same time. And if not, if all of this is really new to you, learn and take notes so that you can possibly teach it yourself the next year. I know one of the things that drives me nuts being a specialist is when a teacher will bring a class to the library and then she just leaves. And it's like, she's totally missing everything that I'm teaching. So those kids who need read teaching later are not going to get it because she's not going to know it. So other than that, I would say just reach out to your librarian. I'm sure they are happy to help. And I will stop sharing my screen and see if there are any other questions.
Actually, I have one if you wouldn't mind really quick.
Okay.
How would you encourage teachers to talk to their teacher librarians and maybe their district administrators about getting access to databases or other resources that they may not have initially?
I will say databases for schools are really, really expensive. That getting access at a school level is probably not feasible. District-wide, we found we had a lot of overlap with our local Fort Vancouver public library, and we ended up, we've now partnered with them. We have access to all of theirs. Every student has a digital library card, which is separate from like their regular book checkout. And that works great. But the one that we did keep was World Book, just because we found that when we're trying to access it through our Fort Vancouver library, whole classes at a time, it would crash. And so that's the one that our district has kept a subscription to. So I would say reach out to your public library and make a connection there.
Thank you.
And remember, folks, feel free to jump into that Q&A feature to ask questions. Michelle, I really appreciate you going over all, librarians are such valuable professionals that are in these school buildings. And, I just can't encourage history educators, social studies educators, and specifically History Day educators enough to engage with these specialists that are, that have all these different areas of expertise. And, it would be a shame if only the science classes got to really engage with, with these research experts that are in the building. And I think that every History Day program would be strengthened. Well, we know every History Day program is strengthened when History Day teachers are strengthened. And I think having an ally in your school building, or that's maybe these days a Zoom call away, is really going to be something that builds a strong program at your school and in your classroom. And so I really appreciate you sharing all these different areas of expertise, and as well as your tips on how to break the ice and be the one who reaches out and makes that connection. And that it's, if done the right way, it's not asking too much, that teacher librarians are ready and willing to share their expertise. Yeah. I just, that is so important to know. And I know that a lot of the folks that are with us that I see on our attendees list, there's a lot of folks that are new to History Day also. And I imagine that they must feel a little overwhelmed, and how much more confident they could be in embarking on this program if they had a teammate to enter into this with, especially someone who knows the research.
Yeah. I can remember when I was first starting out at my other school, and I went to the librarian, and she had these resources that I didn't even know existed. They were in a vertical file, and they were a collection of primary resources based on topics. I think they were called a jackdaw. And that was something that I never would have known about if I hadn't gone to her and said, hey, I'm doing this project and my kids need to find primary sources. What do you got? We never would have known if I hadn't reached out. So I can't encourage people enough to reach out.
We actually had a question about that, a follow-up to what you were talking about before with the local library. So the question was, is the digital library card that you were talking about, is that through the school library only, or can a parent help a child get a digital library card through the public library?
So our Fort Vancouver library system has something on their site where anybody can go and request a digital library card. So parents could do that from home. We share like once every 3 weeks, we essentially upload our database of students so that we're getting the cards for our new students. But yeah, I don't see why a student couldn't also have multiple digital cards.
Excellent. Oh, great. We got another question.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the other participants says, I'm in Snohomish County in Snow Isle. I think I'm saying that right. Also has an online card. So good to know.
Excellent. Okay, I think then we will go ahead and move on. Michelle, I'd like to thank you again for sharing this perspective, and excuse me, and your years of experience with History Day are invaluable as a resource also, and for making your email available for people to follow up. We appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
We are going to turn our attention now to Kila Salyers Smith to discuss fundraising techniques. We know that this stuff doesn't happen magically and that money doesn't grow on trees. And I'm pleased to have Kila here to share, a lot of the fundraising, tried and true methods and lessons learned that she has developed over the years as someone who has had to do a lot of fundraising in support of History Day. So thank you, Kila. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yep, thanks. Thanks, Hannah. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Yes, okay. Actually, my name's Kila. It's okay, Hannah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I get it wrong a lot. I come at History Day kind of in a weird way. I am not a history teacher. I am an art teacher. And I was asked by my son quite a few years back to take over our history club because he did not want it to die when he started it in high school. And none of our history teachers were willing to take that on. So I come at it kind of a little bit different as far as the fundraising part as well. Our NHD kids do very, very well. We have taken somebody to nationals now. I believe we're 8 years in running, I think, that we've had at least one. In 1 year, we had 21 kids at nationals. So that year, you have about 7 weeks from the end of state to when you have to have everything paid for at nationals. And that was a daunting task to figure out how the heck we were going to try and earn over $25,000 in that amount of time. So we have put our heads and wrapped our heads around a whole lot of really different things. So I've broken up, I'm not going to share anything in on my screen. I'm just going to talk at you right now, but I'm more than happy to answer questions and send you my email if you've got some additional questions. And Brad, you can interrupt me at any time, but I've kind of broken it up a little bit into 3 sections. I run our Whoosh Club. We are the 2nd largest club in our school. So we have a lot of history nerds. We have a lot of fun together. And we have a mascot. And so that mascot's kind of guided some of our fundraising. We do try to make as much of our fundraising history related as we possibly can. So we are not selling chocolate and wrapping paper and all the other garbage that's peddled through all of our schools. And so one of the first things that we did, and it was really successful until we had a change with all of the food abilities and that kind of stuff with school. And now that that's come back, during our testing weeks, one of our funny things with our club, we had a foreign exchange student from Belgium the first couple of years. And so the kids wanted to sell Belgian waffles as something that they did during testing week. We all know what it smells like in Leavenworth. And so Belgian waffles kind of attract attention. And our student, we called him our Belgian ambassador during our club time with him. He thought it was funny because they don't eat Belgian waffles in Belgium. But anyway, we put his face on the front of our shirt. Kids wanted his face on their shirt, so we sold t-shirts that year. We have our little hand sign, the W, so we made a W with whipped cream on the top of our waffles, and sold them for $2 in the morning, and we made a killing on those. So that was a really big fundraiser. In, out, go quick. We had a couple moms come in to help cook waffles, and we had several waffle irons going at once, and that was a real hit. I know you typically with ASB stuff, we do work some of the concessions for the school that are kind of the underserved concessions. So wrestling, some of the basketball things during Christmas break, that kind of thing. So other clubs that are bigger or sports people that are bigger don't really want to do that. We are known for our really cool t-shirts. And so we also offer those up in a little bit different form than our competitor shirts for sale if kids want to purchase our shirts. So those are a couple things that we've done just kind of during the year prior that will potentially help with just our regional and state competition. Our kids get a t-shirt paid for if they are a paid member of the club, and then anybody else has to purchase them. So that also, and everybody wants one because they're cool. So we do make some money off that. A couple things that we're hoping to pull off this next year. We would really like to do a night at the museum kind of thing. We have a whole lot of kids that love history and they like to act. We have a little small local museum, and so we are hoping to be able to partner with our curator at the museum and have the kids actually become local characters from our local community and take the profits from that to go toward some of our competition stuff. And the kids are, I don't know what's going to happen now that we have COVID. So a couple of these ideas were pre-COVID, but that was a kind of thought that people would come and pay to come in, just kind of like the movie with the night at the museum where history comes to life and they become some of the characters. So that was a thought. And another one we have done in one way is to have kind of an amazing race themed national treasure hunt around town using geocaches. And to have it be a way of learning the history of Prosser and have teams compete like on Amazing Race and pay to compete. So $20 a team. We came up with rules. They can only have one NHD member on one Whoosh member on their team so that we're spreading the history wealth a little bit. We have a lot of geocachers in the community. And so that's another one that we were hoping to pull off this year. Last year actually, we were the sponsor for our winter ball. Our formals are the only two dances that make money. And so we took that on. That's not something I would highly recommend for an advisor unless you're super creative and are willing to work your butt off. We happened to do that in the middle of snowpocalypse. So we actually put the entire dance up and were told the next morning the dance was canceled and we had to take it all back down again and put it all back up 2 weeks later. It was a nightmare, but my kids were troopers. We made $5,000 off that dance. So that was a really good fundraiser, but we did it because they have the art teacher that can make things out of junk cardboard. And we came up with an idea. We wanted some kind of history related theme. And so we did a steampunk formal that was very different. And the kids just really liked it because there wasn't something out there that was already canned. So I don't know what dances do in your buildings, but that was something at the high school level that was a big money maker for us last year. We are about to move into a brand new building at the high school level. And so the kids have also proposed some way we could potentially cash in on that. And so we're looking at a possibility of doing some kind of a time capsule. Our community is really tied to our old building. There's an old time capsule that will be opened pretty soon when we open the new building. And so the kids really wanted to say, could we do something to earn a little bit of money with the new time capsule? So people maybe pay, $5, $10 or whatever to put something in that time capsule that represents Prosser High School alumni, that type of thing. So that one's kind of in the background in the works. And so now I'm going to shift a little bit. We do a local history night.
Do you mind if we answer some questions first?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I didn't want to interrupt you, but there's a lot of questions here.
I'm talking as fast as I can.
No, it's all good.
You're doing excellent on time. We have plenty of it.
Awesome.
So the first question, as a club, how do you recruit or advertise for history?
Or members for the club? Is that what we're talking about?
I think so, yeah.
It kind of advertises itself. Anybody is welcome. But because of the reputation of the group, kids just want to be part of it. We do send down an invitation to the middle school level. We've even had a club president go down and say, please be involved. My husband, Dean Smith, has been involved even longer than I have, and he has the kids prior to them coming up to the high school. So kids just want to do it. The kids at the high school don't get any credit at all for it. They don't do anything in their classes. It's 100% on their own time. And they have the art teacher as their biggest cheerleader. So we don't really have to recruit much. It kind of just, the kids do it.
Great, great. The next question, being from Central Washington as well, I'm familiar with the whoosh, but there was a question about what exactly that is. So, I mean, I think a demonstration's in order, personally.
Okay. WHOOSH, it stands for the Washington Organization of Student Historians. It was made up by my son, who's now a history teacher in the Tri-Cities. He's now 27, so it's been around for a while. And it is kind of our little cheer. We use it to pep ourselves up and to support each other. So when we have something awesome happen, we have a W that we all yell whoosh. And it's just kind of our support, and we have a lot of fun with it. We've even had people at nationals kind of take it on.
Yes, if you've never been to especially the regional contest, it's some frequently heard sound. So, next question, can you share some ideas integrating art in history and fundraising?
Actually, I have a couple coming up here in the next few minutes.
Okay.
We haven't done a whole lot other than I have super creative kids. I mean, we do when they're doing things with performance and exhibits. We have quite a few there. We have a lot of requests in our community for tech help with video. We have our nursing homes and our museum actually have requested to have kids help record personal histories for people because they have the background with cameras and that kind of thing. And we haven't turned that one into a fundraiser, but I think that could really easily become one where we charge by the hour, because I think people would be willing to pay for that if that was something that, and we have a lot of kids that just love it. We have our technology club that kind of feeds into me as well, which is kind of weird, but those kids are very highly techy. And so they know the equipment as well as the history side of things. I have not had too many competitors with exhibit at the high school, and so we don't do a whole lot there. But we've talked a little bit about making some paintings of historical, like the Mona Lisa with the head cut out, and possibly doing some $1 to take a selfie with the Mona Lisa or with Aristotle or whatever. That's been something, we haven't done it yet, but that is something that I've brought to the table a few times. As far as our local stuff, we have a local history night here in Prosser before regionals. So we run, it's kind of like a mini regionals for our kids. So it's their first run, usually about 2 weeks before regionals. We bring in a whole lot of community members for judging and that type of thing. And so we run the kids through, and it might be their first draft. They might still even be running on their script or just have ideas, and it gives them a chance to hear the judges' questions, because we use the same rubric for them to hear that and to get some feedback before they're done. And so during that night, we have sold our t-shirts for our clubs. We have a lot of parents and community members that want to support us, so they're willing to do that. We've had a silent auction during that time where we had a Kellen Moore football jersey that was signed by Kellen Moore, who's a Prosserite, that now is a coach for Dallas. And so we've had things like that and have silent auction going on during that evening. And our PTA up until this last year has been really supportive as well. It's kind of weird with ASB. If you're dealing with an ASB, the club restrictions are kind of tough there. And you can't just ask the PTA for money. They have to pay for something in particular. It works better for them that way. And so we had 3 years in a row where the PTA picked up the tab for all the kids' Metro passes at nationals. They paid for the entrance into, some of the events that we did when we were at nationals. If they knew the individual dollar amount, they've been really, really supportive. They don't do a whole lot of family nights and that kind of stuff at the high school. So this is their opportunity to kind of give a little bit back to the older kids. So they've been a really good resource as well. Now comes to national. So this is my third piece.
I was gonna say that segues brilliantly into the next question. So
Okay.
how do you pay for nationals? Do students pay for it? Does the club pay for it? Is it a combination?
I carry over a little bit of money as much as I can, but it kind of depends. We never know. Are we going to have one student or are we going to have 21 students? We don't know. The district pays zero. They support nothing. And so we have to fundraise anything to take the kids. We try and have as much paid per kid as we possibly can. The last year, I think we asked the kids to pay $250, which is nothing. If you look at the cost of that trip and everything, but we try and cover as much as possible and encourage the kids. The more they fundraise, the less their families are going to have to come up with. And so we go into it always thinking we're going to have a lot of kids go. And if we have extra money, like we are going to this next year, we'll have quite a bit this year because we only had one last year. And didn't have to pay for travel and all that. So this, the online kind of helped us a little bit in the pocketbook. But we do have a few things that we do. And so one of the biggest ones for our fundraising is what we call the Night of the History Stars. It's about 2 weeks after state. So we know who's going to nationals if we've got students that go and who has projects that are worthy of really kind of highlighting. Our community has been so supportive and they want to see the projects and not many of them get to. And so we have a nice little older theater that's been refurbished here in town and we work hand in hand with them. They donate the use of the movie theater for an evening. And we have all the students that are going to be competing at nationals and then a handful of others that maybe want to that are really, really hand-selected projects. We put them up on the stage and they do their presentation. And we typically ask the kids 1 or 2 questions in front of the audience that kind of let them expand a little bit. It gives them an opportunity to kind of have that questioning piece again. But it also is a great opportunity for our community to see how awesome the program is. It has more than paid for itself because we have gotten some patrons because of that want to support us. And so what we have done as far as payment goes, we have done it a donation to come in to watch them. We recommend $5. Very few people pay only $5. We have, I think the first year we did it, the group that was so large, that was a long night. We were asking people to give up about 3 hours. And so we had people come in and I had one in particular that said, how much are plane tickets? And we told him about what it was. And he said, okay, the 3 high school kids, here's a check, and wrote us a check for the 3 kids' plane tickets. We've had the newspaper show up, business people that show up and write us checks. So that is a great fundraiser. All the families can come in and watch. And so that's been a real big one. And there really isn't any outlay of money for us. The theater space is donated. And so there's no cost there at all. And we also get a chance to recognize our sponsors, which we do a t-shirt sponsor. Our t-shirts, we have a t-shirt made for nationals that has our year's logo on it. But on the back, we have, we sell sponsorships. We have 3 levels of sponsorship: bronze, silver, and gold. That depends, that determines the size of the font on the back. We let the business choose the name that they want to go on their back, and we tell them you literally have our backs when we're at nationals. And so we have all of that. We have it separated out with what cost it is to be at what level for the sponsorship. And we have, when we go, we always try and get up to the Capitol and meet up with either our governor or something. And so we take a picture on the Capitol steps or on the steps of one of the buildings, and then we turn around so that all the sponsorship names are on the back, and I print up a card when we come back as their thank you. So they get, it's kind of double duty for us. They get a really cool memento with all the kids' names and everything, all the kids on it, but it's also an advertisement for them. And so a lot of our businesses hang them in their businesses. So it kind of gives us a little advertising there. And so that's another big one. We have a great connection with our local Eagles. We have a woman that she's the one that makes our shirts, that wants to support us so badly. Working with the Eagles is a tough one with ASB because they sell alcohol. That makes things a little iffy. And they gamble because they have pull tabs. And so trying to siphon money through that for anything is hard. So they have worked really well with us. They want to run a dinner, and they don't even want our kids to work it. They can be there to, you know, say hi and thank you or whatever, but they provide us with the workers. They make dinner for us. They get donations of silent auction items and sell it all for us. And then they write us a check at the end. It's awesome. They actually write the check to me. So we don't have to siphon it through ASB. So don't tell my administrators that it goes that way, but that's the way that we can kind of work the money through. We also have done a pre-purchase car wash. I don't know if anybody's run one of those. We have one of our dads of one of our competitors has a car wash, and we sold pre-purchase tickets for $20 for a car wash and detailing, inside detailing for a particular day, which sounds kind of pricey, but they got a really good car wash and detailing out of it. But about half of our people didn't show up, so we didn't even have to do them. So if you pre-sell them and they don't show up, oh well, that's too bad, so sad. So that worked really well, and we sold a lot of those. Oh, let me see if I missed anything. I've been talking 90 miles an hour. Sorry, guys. I think that's about everything, unless can you think of anything, Dean, that I missed? Nope. Okay. So I don't know if we've got any questions. I know I talk really fast, but.
We did have one more, but I think we might want to save it to the end because I think all three of you probably have some way to answer that. So we'll hang on to that one for now.
Awesome. I hope there's something in there.
Excellent. You know, Kila, one of the things that I think is so awesome about what you shared is how much you're reaching out into your community to, you know, to partner with community resources on these fundraising things. And, you know, every teacher that's listening to this has a community that they can, you know, engage with. And I think you've given a lot of ideas on, you know, oh, wait, you partner with a museum. I have a museum in my community. You partner with a theater group. There's a theater in my community. So I just really appreciate how I hope that these will be really transferable ideas, you know, transplantable to different places in the state.
Hope so. Thank you. And if you have questions later, guys, my email, I can give it to Hannah, but it's pretty easy. It's kila.smith@prosserschools.org. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. So
yeah, we'd be happy to upload your contact information to in the presenter resources so people can reach out to you.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Thank you again. We're going to, and just as one final note, if I could make a quick plug on fundraising. So these were some excellent ideas on fundraising on behalf of your, you know, of your students, getting them to nationals and helping to fund their exhibits and their props and everything like that. But I want to make sure that History Day educators and social studies educators and History Day educators in general know that we have an organization, excuse me, there's a national organization called the National Society of Colonial Dames of America. And we have a chapter here in Washington State that is very involved with History Day. They're big supporters and appreciators of the History Day program and of history teachers. I've got their website right here. And the Colonial Dames offer teacher scholarships every year. So if you go to nscdawa.org, you can go to the teacher scholarship and teacher resources page. And those teacher scholarships are due, I believe, March 6th. And this is to support your professional development. So if there is a class that National History Day is offering that you'd like to take that costs $600, you know, put in a scholarship application for the Colonial Dames and see if they'll support you in that. If you need to buy a documentary software for your kids to use to make documentaries, classroom supplies are also something that Colonial Dames supports. So I just encourage you to check that out for your own professional development and classroom supplies and things like that also. Okay. So let's transition over to our final presenter, Brian Loffer. I think I saw you pop up.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you so much for being here, Brian. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and jump on in.
All right, and I do have a little presentation I'm going to go through. So. Yep.
And don't worry about time. We have to make it to 5 o'clock for the clock hour, but we can go over. So.
I'll try to be efficient and have opportunity for questions as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Let me just share here. right. So my name is Brian Loffer. I'm the Director of Assessment and Highly Capable Programs at the Bethel School District. I do have my contact information here, and I'm going to be more talking about kind of more systems level support, and kind of where Bethel has had History Day in part of their work. So I'm going to talk about the history of the participation that we have had. We did a move from high school to 8th grade. I'm going to talk about why we did that, and that was where I kind of came involved here. Benefits that we have found from doing History Day, lessons learned from our experience there, and then I'm going to briefly touch on some pieces, and there'll be some documents that I shared with Hannah about how we put together our district showcase for, it's about 200 or so students that we do it for. So just kind of the history of participation. We had History Day's been at Bethel High School in the 10th grade for years. That was a school I taught at and became an administrator at. So that was my exposure, and that was Marsha Williams, and then followed by Jim Sawatsky. He had that there. So we had a long history already with that. But we did move it to the 8th grade as part of a capstone to our middle school honors program. And so in 2017, that's when that move occurred. And we kind of made a slow progression here. In that 2017, we kind of got a late start, so we weren't really ready for regionals. So instead we said, we're gonna do an end of year showcase. This is gonna be our kind of practice year. And so we did what's called a District History Day Showcase. Showcase was a purposeful word because we didn't, there was some concerns about it being competitive from a couple of the teachers. So we called it a showcase, and that's what it was. And then 2018, we continued that everyone in the district will be involved in the showcase, but then we started having schools participate in the regionals, and then if they qualified, state. So we did in that year, had 2 schools at regionals, 1 at state. In 2019, it's been my goal that each year we increase that. We had 4 schools attend, everybody attend the showcase, but 4 schools attend regionals and 4 schools at state. And finally, last year it was 100%. It was all of our schools, and that represented 7 schools that we have that are middle schools with the 8th grade programs. This allowed for a little bit of choice. Some teachers were more ready for this than others. So it gave that opportunity for us to, we all were doing it, but it was something that we kind of slowly moved in. So why did we move that History Day to the middle school for us? Well, it was really more of a couple of issues. My role in this came because I oversee the highly capable programs in our district. And our honors program has an ELA and a social studies. It's a humanities block. And we saw a lot of inconsistencies. We had 7 schools, 7 vastly different programs, and kids were getting a vastly different experience at each school. So History Day was an ability to bring in, and let's get some common and equity of access into what our programs were. Bethel High School at that point was moving away from History Day because they started the Cambridge program there that took a lot of the same Jim Sawatsky's efforts had to be focused there, and a lot of the kids that typically had participated in History Day were now part of the Cambridge program. We didn't see a real mesh. So it kept the participation alive in our district, in fact expanded, but down to the 8th grade. We were looking for that meaningful capstone to the honors program, and felt that this was History Day was just a meaningful application of both your ELA and social studies. And really kind of a good culmination of all that they had been learning. But I liked History Day because of the strong resources that were available from the National History Day website. We weren't having to recreate the wheel here. This was an infrastructure that already existed out there. And so that was something that was very helpful for us to get started. I also really believed in some of the student choice aspect. There was not just the topic, but the project type, and whether it's group or individual. I think that is something that's very powerful, and I believe a best practice. If you look at UDL concepts right now, they're talking about student choice, and that is something that really resonates. And then finally, that opportunity, I think the competition, while it's not everybody's cup of tea, but the opportunity for that stretch and someone really doing, going further than they ever thought they would, And that's something that we had some people really kind of grow with having this experience. And I did want to adjust, now we do it in our highly capable or honors program, but I just want to make note that we by no means see it as only a highly capable option. In fact, we have some that are highly capable and some that aren't in this honors. If I had my way, I would see this across all of our kids doing it, because I think it has real value. So I didn't want to color that it should be honors. It just, that's where the history we have it in here. We have experience that is part of the honors program, and I oversee that, so I had control of that. So that's why it's in there. Some benefits, we have seen some benefits on this. It's been a good focus for our whole middle school program. It wasn't just the 8th grade, but I had, when we do district showcases, the other 6th grade and 7th grade honors teachers, they're part of the judging, part of that, and they're starting to say, well, wait a minute, what can we do to help prepare our kids for that experience? So it had an impact for a good focus of the program. It made history real for students. It wasn't this abstract concept. We did actually see, now this was mostly highly capable kids, so we had high SBA scores for those kids, but when we started looking at learning targets, we did see that kids, while they were receiving level 4s, their writing had been historically a lower score for them, and they weren't, and so as well as some of the evidence and reasoning targets, and those improved over the years that we were doing this. So there was some noticeable, not just bringing my other hat, the assessment hat on, and I think it helped some kids. I mean, perseverance, grit, something that not all these kids hadn't always been challenged, and this provided that, but it wasn't something that was meaningful to them. So I think that was there, and I think there's the added benefit. Some of the kids in our program, maybe some of their executive function isn't the highest, but this allowed, really, we had to learn how to organize our time, manage. I mean, that is much a part of this, and an important a skill outside of the ELA and history standards that were being addressed. So some lessons learned. I can paint a perfectly rosy picture here, but let's get real. This is a lot of work. Teacher buy-in is important. I had 7 different schools, and we were trying to get consistency where consistency wasn't there. So that was my intent. We noticed that when I showed the progression of increasing participation, that was not the original intent. That was that we were going to start, hey, let's do this. This is great. Well, I had to bring people along. People had to experience it first. People had to see it, and then it became something more, and buy-in was really important. And so that's something that it made perfect sense to me, but top-down leadership doesn't always work. Moving a system is harder than an individual teacher. There are a couple teachers, and I wanted to, a couple of the teachers really took off on it. They just saw it. In fact, those were the ones that we sent to, I wanted to just give a plug for the Colonial Danes. We got that scholarship, and we were able to send I forget, it was somewhere on the East Coast where we sent this, but amazing professional development experience for them, and that, so I really would promote that. But working with individuals was easier than working with the whole system. Student choice is important, and I say that, but some teachers I found, they had a comfort in a certain area themselves, and so that's what they were promoting, and realizing, no, the choice is important, that's and let's not just do this because this is what we feel we can do this first year, because I think we're missing a real important thing, especially with not the topics, but the choice of the modality, or how and whether the type of whether it's a performance exhibit, etc. Coordinating with librarians, I think when I had to pop in a little late because, like a lot of people, we're doing multiple Zooms these days. But I heard a librarian was talking, and that is absolutely vital, and one of the things I wish we had promoted that earlier. But getting our school librarians involved, this is their deal. They love this, and we got some really good partnership that lasted beyond History A. But also, if you're near a college, we are fortunate that we're close to PLU and have made a relationship with PLU. In fact, the librarian there came and helped judge our district showcase. She wanted to come help, and so that was a great relationship there. Support is needed for teachers going into this. While there's great resources, on the National History Day website, it's almost overwhelming to start. Where do I start? How do I break this down in a timeline? And it's all there. It's just sometimes we need some help to get the right resources at the right time to the right people. So we do. I'm very fortunate. We're a district large enough that we have teachers on special assignment. Now we have a teacher that on special assignment that is ELA for secondary grades. Now that she has many jobs, but she did help out with this as and in providing help and working with teachers, helping that timeline occur. Time for planning. We had 7 schools. We met at least 3 or 4 times, sometimes more, as a group at the beginning of the year, timing out how and making connections to our curriculum. And so kind of aligning those two and really providing that support ongoing. We also had some schools that the teachers that I paid for additional time for them to get together after school, or and just 2 of my schools to work together, made some partners, especially when there was a new teacher to the group. Authentic practice is needed. I heard someone else refer to here that they do some kind of dress rehearsal, for lack of a better word, on there. And that's what our district showcase was. Although the first year was way after the History Day regional competition even occurred, it became, though, that it was before. And it was the preparation, the feedback, with enough time to adjust projects as needed. So and with that, making sure that we're not just using, like the first years, I think we did this, we were using the rubrics in our district showcase, and realized, oh, we really haven't been using them in class. Let's make sure that they are just part of what we're doing. The kids know that just as well. Some of the teachers that were maybe hesitant at first, sending them to help judge. Now that Jim Swatsky was always asking for help, so we got them and to help judge at regionals and help at state. That got them the picture of the end in mind. They're like, oh, I see what this is. And that really helped them know how they can really address things in a later year. So I encourage that. And when I go over the showcase and talk about that, I'm going to show you last year's showcase, which we fortunately got done the first week of March, or it was like late February, March, right before school closure. So we actually did that, and that represents four years of learning and some hits and misses in systems. So I think we really finally had it down, and now we're going to have to look at online, I guess. I don't know. We'll see, but it's never dull. So I'm going to pause here first with some questions, and then I'll go over just some highlights of our showcase and how we set that up.
I think we're good. The question that we've got in the hopper is for the end of the session.
All right. Hold on. Let me get back here. Share it again. Just had something crash on my computer. One moment.
One of the other things that we got in the question bin is there are more resources. So the Washington Library Association has a lot of conferences and resources available for teachers to use. So that's a couple of the presenters recommended that you check those or that group out. There's also the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. They have a chapter locally, and to visit their website for more resources as well.
All right, so I'm just going to share a couple pieces of History Day. I think I gave Hannah, and she'll share out the program that we have. And also this presentation. This presentation is, I just took excerpts from our planning meeting that we had and that we did in January before. So it kind of was all the details when I'm meeting with the teachers and making sure that we're all good to go for our History Day showcase. We had always rotated amongst the different schools. And I'm going to go quicker over some of this because some of these are details you don't need, but it was typically 2 hours. And what we did is we basically made it a schedule. Every kid had an individual schedule, and they rotated from different events. And it was a 30-minute rotation, so 4 rotations. one of which was them either presenting or talking to a judge or for their project. The other opportunities were to give feedback. We had student feedback forms that to other student projects that then we assigned to make sure that every kid had, that there was always an audience for kids. So we made it assigned. The first year it was just go to where you want, and we made that assigned in future years. And then we also even had one rotation was a snack break that you had with, and oftentimes you're with the same people that if you performed with, et cetera. And so that just kind of a little time to decompress. And so I'm not going to read these expectations for you, but it is good to have expectations about what students should be doing and how they should be acting when they're at the showcase. So that was kind of lessons learned. This is an example of a student schedule that we had given. So this top one is a student that they're presenting their exhibit from 5 to 5:25. Then they go to a room where they're viewing a documentary with an audience. They have a snack break, and maybe they're viewing websites. And so again, we evened up the numbers there. We ended up finding that it was easier to have a double session for performances, and we usually fit 3 performances in that hour time. Students were, we would send actually schedules to the kids. It's an example of a schedule that they actually had on little QR codes, because they all had we told them to bring, we're a one-to-one iPad district, so they brought their iPads, and we're able to get the reflection forms and everything right on their student schedule, as well as the program. A little bit about rubrics. Now, I understand rubrics have changed, so we're going to have to go through this process again. But one year we tried to do the whole thing, that the judges were, and this isn't, it's not quite authentic in the amount of time. We're going through a whole bunch at any given time here during this. So we realized we were asking the judges to give feedback on way too much that they had time to do, because it's like they're talking to one, they have just like a minute, now they're going to the next. So we realized we needed to put a little more focus. So part of which is we said, no, students are actually going to use the rubric on a couple of different categories. So we broke up categories that students are going to be giving feedback on from the rubric, versus when the students are visiting or looking at others. These are the ones that the adults judges are going to be giving feedback on, and that still left some things that we felt were better feedback just in this classroom. That we would not have had the time to give adequate feedback for those parts. So that was what how we decided to narrow down the focus. And I would recommend, if you're trying to go through a lot, narrowing down the focus might be good. We actually had we used a lot of Google Forms. And so students would go to their Google form that basically had a sheet, and they'd click. If this is the kids, they see, oh, I'm doing this project, I'm going to go review this one. They click, and it creates a form that's all pre-identified with the kids' information, the school that they have, and then it has the form and the rubric all the way loaded in there. So they're actually giving that feedback. So I was able to get all of that feedback and send it to the schools and to the kids that it was appropriate. Same thing for adults. They had assigned, I would assign, Carolyn was a librarian. These are all the kids that she, and when she was supposed to be assessing those, so making sure that everybody knew what they were supposed to do during their times. Papers was something we thought, well, how do we do this in the showcase? We wanted them to have something as well. So we did a combination of things. When we don't usually have that many kids that do just the papers, but those that did, we brought in and did a Socratic seminar with them, as well as they had provided us a copy, so and I shipped it around to a couple different teachers to get some feedback on. But a lot of it was being able to share in a Socratic seminar amongst other kids that had papers. So that was a way for them to have something as well at the showcase. Sites, we had done some different things with, and eventually we just said we're going to treat them like an exhibit, and we had a few different monitors around, and people were just going through and doing it that way. I think, well, I will just say one, I also had to make sure teachers knew exactly what their role was during this, whether they were judging, whether they were corralling kids. There we actually found kids, if you make a schedule good enough with clear timelines, places to be, you don't need someone marshaling the kids. They know how to get from one place to another. And I used the teachers were all judges. We did have to talk about transporting exhibits. We're a big district, and so we did have our warehouse people come at separate times to pick up exhibits. We learned, I hate to say it the hard way, that sometimes there's very delicate things, so we asked to get that kind of information prior, and either we will sometimes transport those in individual cars, or say, no, you should bring it yourself if it's that delicate. And that was, especially when it's before the regionals or state, that, you know, they're working on this. This is, you don't want anything. Also little things like labeling well. If there's parts that fit together and you're picking up a whole bunch, well, all of a sudden you don't know what part goes to what. So just some lessons there. And we had a system where, similar to what I know we ended up having to do for History Day, regional and state, that kids would have to upload, and teachers would be uploading any papers or documentaries or websites prior, because that was already ready by the showcase time, that we had all that information. So that was, again, a lot of use of Google Forms to be sharing all of this. And that is what we did for the showcase. So I will pass it off for questions that either me or the rest of the panel.
Brian, I am just so impressed with the way that Bethel School District has, you know, bought into and embraced History Day, and the amount of time and effort and energy that this whole team that you've put together puts into this program every year. You know, whether or not anyone participates in the contest, this is such a learning experience for these students. And I hope that hearing from you will inspire you know, teachers who are considering taking on this program to have a courageous conversation maybe with their administration and say, look, you know, and that some of this insight from you will help them to have those conversations with their own administrators too.
Thank you. I just, a couple things. Just one, it became important for us because I did not have every group attending, and I was trying to build a common program as well. So I was, okay, well then we're going to do something. It's going to be equally as big and important for kids. And I say judging, we never gave in. There was no first place, second place. It was, you got feedback. It was about feedback, and you had an opportunity. And there were kids that we really thought, oh, well, a lot of these kids haven't had an opportunity to speak in front of people. And this was, and that was something that we probably need to work on and have more authentic opportunities for that. But that was my goal, was that this is just as good. Because sometimes it was the teacher that we needed to help a little bit to get ready for it, and I wanted everybody to have something, and so every kid, that was a requirement. They had to participate in the district showcase. So that was tight. The loose was, in the past, you go to regionals. Last year it was everybody goes to regionals, and so that was pardon me, I should say every school goes to regionals. The way we said it, not that we allowed for some to not go there. And it kind of was a thing that I saw how hard my teachers were working, and I felt I had to pony up and do the same for them.
Well, I'm sure that is so appreciated by them too, that all of the students in your district that participate are able to really, you know, to have that showcasing and that feedback opportunity as well. That, you know, those professional experiences can be few and far between for students, and to be able to do that at the district level is really a blessing for those kids. As a graduate of the Bethel School District myself, you know, I can say that this type of program is really was really helpful. And I appreciate also that you have shared all of your showcase resources with the viewers of this webinar. That, again, all of the panelist resources and the recording of these videos will be available within the next few days on the WSCSS website, wscss.org. And you can take from Brian's presentation, you know, for your own reference, or take with you to share with your district administrator. And you've got a whole setup for a showcase and for, you know, your pre-meeting and your teacher training and everything right there. So we thank you for sharing that resource also. Brad, do we have any final questions in the chat?
We do, and frankly, I think it's the one that's on everybody's minds these days. So what, and this is for any of the panelists, what are some new ways that you think we could be teaching history online during these remote learning times?
Kyla's shaking her head.
I'll go ahead and answer that, and I'm going to answer.
Yeah, just real quick, Kyla, you unmuted yourself, but your audio wasn't coming through for me. So while you're sorting that out, we'll have Brian go and then jump over.
First of all, I will tell you that we're going to take a dip in participation this year because I'm now making what was required for all my schools. I'm making optional. We have a couple new teachers that are in there. They are busy right now trying to just figure out what's going to happen on September 3rd. And so I was like, I'm going to relax a little bit. That being said, there are a couple teachers that it's become their baby, and I want to continue to support that. And I think it really actually would fit. The more we're talking about some of the asynchronous learning and the getting feedback to kids, and it actually fits. I mean, in some ways, I think they might be able to do this better than what some of the things I see we're planning. So, so I think that working with History Day, in fact, I'm going to share a real quick story. There was we have a K-8 school, and that was the 7th quote middle school, and they hadn't participated. And this was someone who came from elementary. She felt she was out of her league because history really wasn't her strongest suit. And it wasn't until she was like, oh, I don't have to be the expert here. I just need to ask the right questions. I need to get them. I need to help them have the critical eye. But she felt she had to be the expert and be the deliverer of all of this. And so I think that in some ways that asynchronous learning that she was able to do in that sense, because she said, I couldn't teach it. I gave them the tools. I asked the good questions. And in some ways that I think we could do that in remote. I think where it might be more difficult are some of the kids getting together and working together, maybe a little bit more difficult. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more smaller groups or more individual projects. But I don't think it's impossible. In fact, it could even be beneficial. It's probably a lot for someone new to it, though.
Thank you for saying that, Brian.
But I would say too that there's enough of us out there. You know, if you're looking for some resources, like I would say any of the people that are participating in these webinars, most school districts have 1 or 2 people that do History Day. It really is easy, I think, if you're looking to find somebody locally who wants to help. And if you're not, just email Hannah and she'll put you in touch with, any one of us. In fact, one of our, we have a consultant that works with our school district, and she actually called me today and she said, hey, there's a teacher in another district who wants to know about History Day. Like, can I give them your email address? So I think if you just, if you just look around, like there's plenty of teachers who would be happy to help with that too, if you're not sure even where to start.
Kyla, I'm crushed. I can't hear you. Brad, are you able to hear her? Okay, I see you talking, but.
How about that?
There we go. There we go.
Got it. I had to turn it on my mic too.
Okay.
I was going to say I don't really have much more to add, not being a history teacher. I don't teach history. Art's going to be a real interesting one doing this as well. However, my husband, also an NHD person, is a history teacher and a highly capable teacher. So I listen to all of his stuff that goes on as well. So, they're in the works of working it all through. And I actually think history is probably going to be one of the easier ones to do this way. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope you'll join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock for session 3, which is History Day Teaching Tools, Noodle Tools, STEM Skills, and Google Classroom. Have a good evening, everyone.